you're listening to the Content Sells podcast, the show all about how to create content to attract, convert, and keep your ideal clients. Welcome to episode 269. I'm Suzi Dafnis, and here with me is my co-host, Michelle Falzon. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, Suzi, I am doing really well. As always, juggling lots of things, especially before I head overseas. As we record this, I'm just about tomorrow actually to head to Bali for a month for a bit of a working holiday combo, which is I'm looking forward to. My adult kids are coming with me and their boyfriend and girlfriend, so it's kind of a new era. I'm really looking forward to it. But you know what it's like when you're trying to just do all the things before you go. How are you going?
Yeah, good. Yeah, there's always so much to do before going away. Just like there's a household, to kind of, wrap up and get taken care of. And there's always what to pack. Although I'm hoping you're just going to be in your bathers sitting by the pool and not having to pack too much at all.
Yeah, I have not packed as yet, but maybe I'll just throw a few cozies in.
I am well, thank you. I'm looking forward to digging into our topic for today. And on that note, I want to start by asking you, our dear listener, a question. Have you ever had that moment where you're working on a strategy? Maybe it's your webinar funnel or your content plan or a new lead magnet, and you're doing all the things, but it's just crickets. And by that I mean nobody's buying, nobody's downloading, nothing's happening. So you start to wonder, is this even working? Is this even worth it? Maybe I should try something else. Maybe I've missed the boat. Maybe this strategy just isn't meant for my kind of business. And if you're answering yes, maybe what you can also relate to is that this is the moment a lot of people bail. They jump to a new strategy, they chase the latest bright, shiny thing, and they start yet another something from scratch, only to find themselves right back in that same situations a few weeks later or months later when this new something, it's also crickets for that.
Yes. I totally, yes. And we see this all the time with the women business owners that we help and support, and I get it. We all want fast results, and it's very typical to underestimate how long things take before they're going to actually give us a return. And it can be hard to know, is what I am doing working? When we start something, how long is it? Is it realistic to wait 3 months for this to turn around? Should I do this 10 times before the 11th time is the charm?
Yeah.
And we can second guess ourselves or worry that we've taken a wrong turn. And so we change horses mid-race, hoping that's what will get us the result we want. But all that stopping and starting is typically way more expensive than picking one horse and riding it to the finishing line, because very often it's not the strategy you're using that's broken. It's that you're quitting it too soon.
And so we're not talking about sticking with things long after it makes sense. Instead, we're wanting to direct your attention to those places and spaces in your content marketing where you might just actually need to hang in there a bit or even double down on the strategy that you're already doing.
Exactly. Because, that is the missing piece, I think. And so today we want to talk about that critical gap, the place between when you start implementing a strategy and when you actually start seeing results. That is one of the hardest gaps to be in, and it's also where the real magic happens. So it's kind of a dangerous place. Is this going to turn into something? But it's also, if you can stick with it, a really magical place. And if you're in that place right now, if you're in that gap, first off, we feel you. We feel for you. We feel with you. But maybe you started building your email list, or you've launched your podcast, or you've begun nurturing leads with a new sequence, or you've launched that new product, or you've decided to step into doing webinars and it feels like nothing's happening, or it's not happening fast enough, or it's still feeling clunky or difficult, or the conversion rate's not where you want it.
Yeah.
This episode, we've made it just for you. Because what if the results you want are right around the corner, but you just can't see them yet? What if you, by doubling down and investing more in building your skills around it, or looking at some metrics, or changing one or two things, or just hanging in there a bit longer, you could see some incredible changes? What if you're quitting or thinking about quitting right before the breakthrough?
And this is the reason for this episode. This is so common, and you might be wondering, well, how do I know if I'm right near a breakthrough or not? How long is too long to invest in a strategy? How long is not long enough? And we're going to give you some ways to think about that more clearly here today on this episode. But what I can say is that in our experience, it's more likely you haven't given a strategy enough time, focus, optimization, we'll talk about all those things, than it is that you've given it too much of those things. So how do we do that? Well, apart from our own experience growing multi-million-dollar businesses and seeing firsthand the power of sticking with a strategy over decades sometimes, we've also seen what this advice has done for our Marketing Success Masterminders. That's the year-long program that Michelle and I run. And when someone first joins the mastermind, they can tend to hop around from strategy to strategy because that's such a common approach. But with our support and by modeling our other more experienced masterminders, they quickly see the power of rinsing and repeating, of looking at ways to get more people into the funnel before giving up on it, of being consistent over time, of digging in and optimizing what they've already done, what they've already created. Like Michelle said, whether it's a webinar or a landing page or an e-commerce store or a presentation or a proposal, whatever it is. Because even if something feels like a fail the first time you do it, it doesn't mean it's a failed strategy. And like Michelle was saying, the strategy is likely fine. It's your execution of it that needs work. So webinars work, email marketing works, sales calls work, social media posting works, online ads work, but expecting them to work right out the gate or even in your first few attempts, that might be what's keeping you from finally breaking through with your marketing strategies.
And that makes sense, right? If you were a gymnast and you gave up after the first bad cartwheel, you'd never get to that double, triple back somersault. You know, in that example, you'd likely accept that, you know, while doing a cartwheel is a perfectly fine strategy, expecting to execute on it perfectly the first time is a bit unrealistic. Like we can look at it in another field, like gymnastics.
And it's obvious, right?
And it's obvious. You know, we can look at that and go, well, of course I'd need to train my body. I'd need to build my muscles. I need to practice their technique and the form. I'd need to get a coach. I'd need to watch the video and see where I was kicking my leg over or whatever. I'd need to try a few different ways I put my hand down on the mat and so on. And then once I've kind of got better and better at it and mastered the basic cartwheel, then, you know, it would make sense that I'd move on to the next level and the next, and eventually I'd get to that triple back somersault. So can we take that sort of clarity in that other field over there and apply it to ourselves? Because it's the same when we're implementing a marketing strategy. So many of us want to go straight to the triple back somersault, or we do that first cartwheel and, you know, we fell flat and we go, well, this doesn't work. That first version of your cartwheel, your marketing cartwheel, might suck. In fact, it probably will suck. And that is not the time to bail out. You've just learned a ton of things and started building some skills that you can build on.
So to bring it back to marketing, as Michelle's doing, maybe you haven't yet given enough volume, which means you haven't done enough of it yet or reached enough people for your marketing to work effectively. Or there hasn't been enough consistency or time allowed. For example, one of our gorgeous masterminders, Kristy-Lee from People Powered HR, is going through this process of skill building and growing her marketing muscles as it relates to hosting a sales webinar. So instead of doing one webinar and saying, okay, that didn't do what I wanted it to do, webinars don't work, she's decided to stick with it and build mastery around it. And we've seen her do this over the last 12 months. And she's hosted several webinars promoting her amazing online membership, which is for business owners who want her professional help navigating their HR challenges. And each time she's figured out yet another piece. And she's at the point now where she's getting hundreds of people registering. So she's figured out that, how do I get people to register? And she's getting amazing show-up rates. And by that, I mean the percentage of people who registered who actually turn up at the appointed time to actually be part of the webinar. So she's figured out how to get people to show up. And she's doing well with conversions, getting better and better each time with the number of people who attend the webinar who actually then buy her membership. Now, right now, she's getting our help to improve those conversions. And so while she's aced the volume of registrations and the attendees, there's still a few skills for her to build to lift those conversion numbers even further. And she's doing great. And she's going to level them up to a place where we all know that they can be, that she knows they can be. So she is putting in the time. She's investing in her place in the mastermind to get our ongoing coaching and support. She's building her skills. She's reworking the webinar structure. And she just keeps building her momentum rather than going, squirrel, I'm going to go do something else. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been prepared to put in a few bad cartwheels to get to the good cartwheel, to get to the forward somersault so she can do eventually the triple back. I don't know that they're real things, but they sound kind of. And I have too, like you're saying, I've really loved seeing Kristy-Lee on this journey and supporting her each step of the way like we've been doing. And just this week I did a deep dive review of her most recent webinar, like one she just did the last week. And this is, again, just to give you an insight into what this looks like, what not quitting too soon looks like, what sticking with it looks like. And so she did the webinar and asked for feedback in the group. Hey, here's my webinar replay. Can you take a look at it? Can you let me know what I could have done differently? And so we did. She's had peers in the group who are doing webinars giving her feedback. I watched the whole thing. I did a detailed 40-minute video with feedback on how to restructure some of the things that I think will help her with her conversions. And, you know, she, as soon as I posted that, she blocked out time in the next morning to watch it, to make notes. She said she's rewatching it. She's continuing to make notes. She's looking at what she's going to change. You see how she's building the muscle? She's learning. She's getting support. She's asking for feedback. She's doing the thing. She's iterating. In other words, she's putting in the time and the effort and really managing the tension, and I want to say that word again, tension that comes up when we're in that gap that we were talking about, where the strategy we've implemented maybe hasn't fully paid off like we'd like to. We might be feeling frustrated or worried or like, oh, I've put so much into this. I just want this to work. And this tension can show up in ways that are not productive, especially if you're paying attention to the wrong signals. You're letting one unsubscribed email or a low open rate doubt your entire plan, or you're getting distracted by what somebody else in your industry is doing and it pulls you away from what was maybe starting to work. There are so many things that can have us quitting too soon. So our mission here is really to help you stick with the right strategies for longer so you can finally start seeing the results that you've been working so hard for.
And I love that example about Kristy-Lee, and she's doing so well. And what we've seen is that one of the biggest reasons people quit too soon is that they don't realize just how long it actually takes for a strategy to bear fruit. So they're out there seeing success in the world with other people and thinking that happened overnight. And with all strategies, there's a natural lag time between when you plant the seed and when you harvest the result. And if you don't expect that lag, you can end up walking away from a strategy that was just starting to work. And so think of this as the time to result gap. And it shows up everywhere in marketing. So you launch your podcast and it takes a few months before people start listening regularly. You build your email list and it takes quite a few touch points before someone actually hits reply or buys from your emails. You start running webinars and maybe the first one doesn't convert, but your second or third or fourth or fifth does, because you are staying with it and you are tweaking and making it better.
Yeah, and it is so easy, I get it, to misread that gap. You start to think it's not working when really it is working. You're just still in that invisible phase and you haven't quite cottoned on to the progress that you're making. And, this is the phase where people might be watching or listening or clicking or considering or getting to know you, or where you're building your skill set and you're getting better and sharper at the messaging or the tech or whatever it might be. But it hasn't quite crystallized. It hasn't quite sort of all clicked together.
I'm going to use something very close to my heart right now, Michelle, and I want to say that this is like training for a marathon, because when you are training for a marathon, you do not see your fitness improve right away. And when you start, everything is painful. You are out of breath. You don't really know what you're doing. But if you show up consistently, if you get the support and training and guidance you need and make corrections along the way, there's a tipping point where, like the 10th time you've done that 10 or 15 or 18 kilometre run, that you realise, oh, I'm much stronger than I was the first time I did this. I can do this. And so I'm training for a marathon right now, and what I can do now that comes easily compared to what I could do a few months ago that felt impossible and improbable, there's a lot that's happened in that gap. And I couldn't out of the gate run longer distances or maintain my speed or my posture or even my mindset. But I've shown up and done the same. If you look at my program, I'm pretty much doing the same sort of thing week on, week out. Getting coaching, getting corrections, getting, chiropractic or physio or whatever I need along the way to correct my style so that I don't hurt myself. And that allows my next time I do that same thing. So in my instance, in this example, it'll be a distance of running. It allows me to do that it makes it less arduous, less painful. And I can build on that momentum that I started. But in the beginning, it felt like, as Michelle said, this is not working. I am not going to get there. I cannot run this distance without being exhausted. Now, I could have abandoned the marathon goal and gone and played pickleball. Maybe I should do that. But instead, I'm just sticking with it. And right now, I am in the messy middle. I don't know how long this gap is going to be before I feel marathon ready. I'm sore. I need more support and guidance, but to keep course correcting and to keep showing up and doing the distances again and again. And I may not get it perfect the first time. In fact, I won't. And you probably won't either the first time you try that e-commerce promotion or that lead magnet or that webinar or that presentation. But the key we're trying to bring home is to not quit, because you might be in that messy middle. You might be just in that gap between and so close. And what we don't need to do is quit too soon.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about a social media post I saw just yesterday, and it's been on my mind. I wish I could credit the person. I can't remember their name, but they showed this graph, and it was an upward graph, like a bar graph where, at position 1, the bar is small, and then position 2, it gets a bit bigger and a bit bigger, and it's sort of an exponential up graph. And he said, everybody wants the end bar, the bar where, it's right up the top.
Yes.
And nobody wants to do all of the bars in between. And it's that consistent. You're showing up, you're running the distance, you're implementing the plan, you're getting the support, and you're holding that tension, because you will get to that final bar, that destination, that outcome you want, but you've got to go through the progression to get there. And there's a really important shift that I've found, like when I've been able to do this in my life, that happens when we understand this and we can manage this tension in this sort of time to result gap. And it is that we stop making as many emotional decisions. We stop pivoting or wanting to get out or abandon things at the first sign of discomfort. And we start trusting the process long enough for it to work. And, Suzi, that's a great example you just gave us. And Kristy-Lee's given us another great example. So if you've been doing the right things but wondering why the results aren't showing up yet, it might not be a sign to quit. It might just be a sign, hey, I'm still in the gap. I need to stop making emotional decisions, stop pivoting at the first sign of discomfort, start trusting the process long enough to let it work.
So hopefully now you've recognized that you might be in that time to result gap that we've been talking about. So the next thing to do is then check, this is so important, have you actually executed this strategy fully and consistently? Because 9 times out of 10, the strategy didn't fail. We see this all the time, Michelle. The execution did. So someone will say, oh, that webinar strategy didn't work for me. But when we dig a little deeper, we find they only ran it once to a cold email list with no follow-up sequence. They didn't spend time crafting a compelling offer in the first place or taking the time required on the webinar to talk through the compelling offer. Instead, they were apologetic for their delivery. They had no clear call to action. All these things, which were more the reason why webinar didn't work than the fact that webinars do work if they're executed correctly. Yeah.
100%. Like this is it. This is it right here, because it's very often the execution. You can think you've executed it right. And this is why we talk about building muscles and nuance and skill sets and skill development and sticking with it and getting feedback and getting coaching and modeling what's working. Because you might have webinar is a great example that you just gave. Like you might have a webinar structure. It's like, do this at the opening, do this in the middle. This is how you deliver the offer. And you might think you've followed that framework, that you've executed on the framework. But chances are you've done a really crappy cartwheel. And you followed the framework, but you didn't do it very well. And so that's not a criticism. That's just how it goes whenever we learn something new. And so how do you keep doing it and keep getting better at it? And it's the same with all kinds of content marketing. Maybe you've decided you're going to really double down on your social media posting, but you only post once every 2 weeks, or, you get in a few sort of, you get in the sort of flow and you post a lot, and then it gets a bit sporadic, or what you're posting is just not that interesting. It's a crappy cartwheel. So you're doing the thing, but it's just not landing because it wasn't good content, or it didn't look good, or whatever it was. Or you created a lead magnet, but it was kind of not on the right topic, or the cover didn't look good, or the way you explain the benefits of it, or the fact you didn't run enough ads to it, or whatever, starts to make that whole sort of thing not work. The execution hasn't happened fully or skillfully. And maybe there's no follow-up sequence, like you said, Suzi. So it's not a failed strategy. It's an incomplete strategy.
And that's a really important distinction. So before you ditch a strategy, ask yourself things like, did I give it enough time? Did I give it enough volume? And by that I mean, did enough eyeballs see that offer? Was I consistent? Did I measure the right metrics? Did I build my skill set? Did I miss anything in the implementation that was actually crucial? Did I follow through thoroughly on the full plan? Did I model what worked, or did I decide to innovate when in reality I should at this point just be modeling, emulating what works so that I can replicate the success that others have had?
And that's often such a beginner's mistake. We all make it in different places and spaces. We think, okay, well, you've told me to do it, step 1, step 2, step 3, but I'm going to do step 1 and then I'm going to do this other random thing. And then 3 more things, and I'm going to skip step 2, and then I'll just get to step 3, and then I wonder why it didn't work. Or look, yeah, you told me to do a cartwheel, but I just want to get straight to that double, triple back somersault, and then they break their leg. And so very often
I shouldn't laugh.
I know, but it's true. We all do it in our own places and spaces. Like, that's the beginner's mind. We underestimate, that gymnast doing that big, fantastic move has done all the work to get there to make that look easy.
Yeah.
And we think, oh, well, I can just go out there and do that. And we can't. And this isn't to disempower you. This is to empower you. And very often this is where having outside support, like a mentor or a coach or a trusted peer or an advisor, is so important, because it's hard to see our own naivety, our own blind spots. You might think you've done everything. Suzi just gave you that fantastic list. Maybe, yeah, I followed through on the full plan. But when someone else looks at it, when Suzi looks at it, or when I look at it, or that colleague of yours that's done this successfully before, they can clearly see you did not implement the plan. There's a missing link here. This wasn't, I see the problem. And we see this all the time. So, for example, one of our mastermind is the incredible Fiona Keary of Style Liberation, and she helps women over 35 sort of find their style and create a wardrobe they love and understand their colour profile and their body types and what fashion works for them. She had been pretty active on Instagram, and she was slowly growing her following. So she did her crappy cartwheels, and then she did some pretty good cartwheels, and then she got into some, maybe some somersaults. And she knew there was a lot of potential to grow her business on the Instagram platform, because she works in fashion, right? It's perfect for Instagram content. So she was having some success, and she's fantastic at holding that tension and getting support and implementing and looking at the right signals and all those things. And over time, she got great at being consistent, putting in the time, developing her skills, all those things Suzi mentioned earlier. And she was really seeing progress, seeing slow and steady growth, but maybe not as fast as she wanted. And also, she was not quite connecting to turning those followers into buyers as well as she wanted to be. And then came a massive breakthrough. And this can be how it is sometimes. You chip away, and then you get this one thing that goes, bang. So at one of our 2-day mastermind meetings, we meet 4 times a year for a 2-day gathering. She heard one of our guest speakers. We invite guest speakers all the time. And it was the awesome Nicole Burke of Gardenery, who has also been a guest of this podcast. And you do want to check out her episode. We'll link to it in our show notes today. At this event, Nicole shared an Instagram strategy, and Nicole's a genius on Instagram if you haven't cottoned onto that already. She's got over 1.4 million followers and has grown a business that is a multi-million-dollar business, getting basically free leads from her Instagram followers. And she shared this strategy that just clicked for Fiona. So she implemented it right away. That's another clue to success. And she started seeing massive and rapid growth in her Instagram followers. And even more importantly, those followers were becoming email subscribers and even better buyers.
She's so good at this. And I mean, she sort of models that for a lot of others in the mastermind. And as is often the way, would Fiona have been able to implement Nicole's strategy as well without all the foundation work she'd already done? Mastery, as we know, in any field takes time. And it's often the feeling of not much is happening, not much is happening, not much is happening. And then bam, a breakthrough happens as all that skill you've developed, all the insights, all the growth, all the consistency starts to pay off. It's a magical moment. And so before you throw out the whole strategy, ask yourself, have I truly executed this or just dabbled? And this requires you to be super present and to really be able to see. And I don't know how to explain that better right now, but it's like take the Vaseline off. Did I follow step 1, 2, 3, 4? I go 1, 2, squirrel, and fall off. Because, and this isn't like to wrap anyone over the knuckles. It's really to say success leaves clues. You cannot expect full strength results from half strength implementation by skipping some of the important steps. And we're talking about here that you actually know where to find the steps. Like when we're talking about our masterminders, we give them the step by step on how to run a webinar that sells, on how to put together a strategic alliance strategy, on how to use AI to develop their content. And so we're like, follow the bouncing balls because there's clues in there. So back to the question I was asking, have you truly executed a winning formula, or have you kind of dabbled and adapted a little bit before? And you can do that when we're masters. So put me in an event room to run an event and I can just dance because I've done it for 30 years. But in the beginning, I followed the manual. This is how you do it, right? The first few times we ran webinars, checklist after checklist, doing it properly, right? Now we can dance a little bit because we have mastery. But until you get to that point of mastery, execute using a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say about jazz, right? You've got to know how to play piano and all the notes and how everything fits together before you play jazz. Jazz isn't just somebody turning up at a piano and just banging away at the keys. It's that dancing like you're doing in the event room. And so having a framework, what you just said there, like we give the step by step, and then realizing that you need to develop your skills to implement that framework, to execute on that framework. And you're going to do crappy cartwheels to start with, and you just need to do it to build your skills. So we've talked about not quitting too soon and making sure you've really executed the strategy. But there's a sort of other piece to this, right? Like maybe you're doing all of that, and the next kind of thing that can come up is, how do I know if this is actually working? Especially if you're still in that gap before the results are really obvious. And this is where metrics come in. And we wanted to talk a bit about metrics here. Even if you don't consider yourself a numbers person, you need to choose a few metrics to track and measure your results so you can tell if you're making progress or not. And if you do make progress, what was it that you tweaked, or what skill did you develop that made the difference? But not just any metrics, you want to track the right metrics. And that means understand the difference between a couple of ideas that we want to share with you. And the first kind of idea is the difference between lagging indicators and leading indicators. Now, that's just fancy language. Let me explain. Lagging indicators are things like revenue. How much money did you make? How many clients did you get? Or sales, what number of units did you sell? These are the final results. These are the lagging indicators, what happened kind of after you did the thing. That's why they're called lagging. But if you only focus on those, you'll miss the signs that progress is happening. Like you only know how a campaign went in terms of the total number of sales at the end. That's the lagging indicator. So that's why you also want to track a few key leading indicators, things that happen maybe before the sale, and that give you an early sign that your strategy is gaining traction. And you need this to keep you going, to keep you motivated, to keep you sane, right? To help you manage that tension. So depending on the type of strategy or content marketing you're doing, some leading indicators might be things like, what are your email open rates? Are people opening your emails? And is that going up or down? Click-through rates. Are people clicking on the links that you're giving them? Number of new subscribers. Maybe that's something that you can look at. the number of people registering for your webinar, engagement and other insights that you're tracking on your social media profiles and platforms, the replies to your emails or the number of DMs, direct messages you're getting on your social media platform you might be operating on, or if you're sending emails, how many replies are you getting? Maybe if you are somebody that does a lot of blogging and you get a lot of SEO and a lot of people sort of clicking through to read your materials, time on page is a metric you can start tracking, a leading indicator. If you're running a strategy and you're starting to see those kinds of signals ticking up, that's a good sign progress is happening. It means things are starting to move in the right direction, even if the lagging indicators, even if the revenue and the sales haven't shown up yet.
I love that distinction that you've just given us, Michelle, on because, we can tend to jump to revenue, client sales, what's happening there. But all those things you mentioned, email open rates, click-throughs, subscribers, webinar registrations, now we're talking about a very specific type of funnel, all those things are things to watch. We had a masterminder who was testing a new lead magnet and wasn't seeing immediate sales from it. But when we looked at her data, her landing page was converting at 56%, which is incredible, right? It's huge. It means more than half the people coming to her page were opting in for the lead magnet. Huge. But it wasn't translating into sales because the step 2, what I mean is what she was doing after they opted in wasn't really doing what it needed to do. Now, it took us helping her sift through all the data she'd collected because sometimes it can be hard to see the forest for the trees if you're tracking too much, if you're tracking everything. And we looked at a few leading indicators. How was the opt-in rate on the page? And then how many of those who opted in took the next step? The first of those metrics was great, as I mentioned. The second one, pretty terrible. But now she had a place to focus. A reason why the strategy wasn't working was she wasn't seeing the clients, the sales, the results. But if she'd only looked at results, she might have thought the whole thing wasn't working and abandoned it.
Yeah, right. This is so true. And, when we're just slogging away and nothing's working and we don't know why, that's pretty demoralizing. But when you can see, it's not working because I've messed up what I'm doing on that page, that we can deal with, that we can handle. So when we were looking at that funnel, Suzi and I, we could see the early wins. We could see the leading indicators. We knew it was worth continuing and building the rest of the funnel out behind it. So ask yourself, are you tracking leading indicator metrics, those things that maybe are happening before the sale, that help you see your progress and know your strategy is tracking in the right direction? Even if your lagging indicators, revenue, sales, number of clients, aren't quite where you want them. Or are you dismissing a great strategy? And maybe you've done this, you look back, you go, oops, I might have done this a few times already. Are you dismissing a great strategy because those final results haven't landed yet? And so we're just throwing out a few helpful concepts for you. Another one is thinking about this idea of the signal to noise ratio. And I love this concept. It's sort of something that has helped me so much in almost every area of my life for many, probably a few decades. And it's a ratio that actually comes from science and engineering. It's a measure that compares the strength of a desired signal to the strength of background noise. So in the old, analog phones, if you were calling home from, India or Indonesia or somewhere, oftentimes there was a lot of static on the line. Your parents couldn't quite hear you talking. That was not a lot of signal and a lot of noise. And so it's a crucial concept, like I said, in science and engineering, and it helps to determine how easily a signal can be detected and interpreted amidst unwanted interference. So if you've got a higher signal-to-noise ratio, it indicates that there's a stronger signal relative to all the noise. So the signal is clearer and easier to work with. And, while it's a science and engineering term, it really does apply so beautifully to business and marketing, and I think all of life, because not quitting too soon is not just about tracking the metrics, it's about tracking the right metrics. Like, where is the signal? Because some metrics, a lot of, people show us 50,000, they'll give us a spreadsheet with 50,000 numbers on it. We're like, we don't need to know any of those. But tell us, what's this one thing? So tuning into the right signals while filtering out the noise is also really important here to know if you're on the right track.
Yeah, and in your business, like all businesses, there is so much noise. You might be hearing things like, no one's engaging on Instagram anymore. You should really be on TikTok. You have to launch that course right now and then 3 times more this year or you're going to miss the window. And, she's doing this strategy, maybe I should try that instead. It's constant, and it completely drowns out the real signals that matter, like your email list is growing or not growing. Your best clients are responding to a particular offer. Your content is getting shared. People are spending longer on your sales page, right? They are real signals. They're the signals that actually matter. When you're in that time to result gap that we talked about earlier, it's especially easy to get thrown off course, because the louder the noise, when the noise is louder than the signal, especially if you're not looking for the signal on purpose, it can really throw you off.
Yeah. So part of your job as a business owner, especially if you want to stay the course and see results, is to actually actively tune into a very small number of leading indicators. You don't need a lot. Those couple of things that clearly tell you, yes, this is working. Yes, I'm making progress. Yes, I'm chipping away at it. Yes, that skill that I developed made a difference. Yes, keep going. We've tossed a few out already, like click-through rate, or, maybe it's your net promoter score. If you do some sort of net promoter survey at the end of your event, it's going up, or it's holding consistent, or it went down when you took that thing away that you didn't think mattered and it turned out it did. It might be the number of referrals you're getting if you sell, on a referral kind of basis, or what percentage of those referrals turn into calls. That's a really good leading indicator to measure. And then what percentage of those turn into sales. So then you can start to go, right, well, if I can get 10 referrals a week and I can turn 10 of those into 6 calls and I can convert half of those people, that's 3 sales a week. Now I'm going to hit my target. Okay, now how do I get 10 referrals a week? Well, to get 10 referrals a week, I need 4 referral partners. Like, that's ultimately where you can get to when you're tracking this signal to noise. So whatever it is, we don't know what it is for your business. We've given you some ideas. Tune into it. Get diligent about looking at those numbers.
Yeah, and as Michelle, at those numbers, you don't need to look at all the numbers. And so to that, be ruthless about tuning out the noise. And that includes the internal noise, and that's your own fear or your impatience, or I've been trying this, nothing's working. And the external noise, like comparisons or trends that don't apply to your business, like what other people are doing out there, may have no bearing on what you should be doing.
Yeah, I love that. And so, yeah, stick to your own marketing strategy. You don't need that sort of crushing noise of doubt and distraction and everyone else's opinion. You just need a few good mentors, a few good metrics, a clear sense of where you're going and what you want to get out of this. You need that clear signal that tells you stay with it. You're on the right wave. You're making progress.
So now you've got a good, solid strategy. You've recognized that you're in that time to result gap. You've committed to being consistent. I'm sort of implanting this into your head as you listen. You've committed to being consistent and building your skill set and making progress toward a better and better execution of the strategy. And you've started to tune into the right signals. So let's talk about how to actually stay the course, because even with all this insight, we're human. Doubt will creep in, life gets busy, we get impatient, we can wonder if the progress we're seeing is going to be fast enough. We worry that, is that breakthrough going to come at all? We get bored, we forget what we've committed to. That's why we recommend being proactive about creating your own stick-with-it system. And that can look a few different ways, but it always comes down to creating structure and support around your strategy so that you're not relying on willpower or memory to stay on track. Now, one of our favorite ways to do this is to create a 90-day focus window. So pick one strategy you're going to commit to, and let's say it's running your lead magnet or nurturing your email list, and go all in for 90 days. So during that 90 days, make a plan to execute consistently, track your key metrics, note down your signals. And this is important, don't evaluate too early.
Yeah, don't pull the strategy apart 2 weeks in because it's not already getting results. Instead, kind of set some checkpoints. You do want to be looking at those leading indicators. So, for example, in the Marketing Success Mastermind, we operate on these 90-day cycles for a reason. We take the calendar year, which can feel like a really big span of time, and we break it into 4 90-day increments. And this is the ideal amount of time to set a big goal and implement a project and really start to see if it's working or not. So every 90 days we meet for 2 days to reset, to evaluate, to tune into the signal, to realize some of the noise that's creeped in, to get feedback and ideas and support, and to review the last 90 days and set the next 90-day priorities. And many of our masterminders are, at those 2-day meetings, they're just choosing to rinse and repeat that same project for the next 90 days that they had in the last 90 days, knowing they need another 90-day cycle where they're up-leveling something, or they're going to double down on their focus on something, or they've just learned, like Fiona did, a new strategy that she just wants to implement into what she's doing, so that they can keep doing better and better cartwheels and graduating to somersaults. And, that's not all. We also create a lot of other checkpoints along the way, and you really kind of want to build these in, whether it's inside the mastermind with us or whether it's in your own frameworks.
Yeah, and this is all for the purpose of accountability, self-accountability, keeping us on track. So we do these weekly check-ins in our online community where our masterminders report in on their progress on their 90-day projects, because it's easy to get off track and chase bright, shiny objects and get caught up in the noise. We also do a monthly Q&A call. And this is another chance to ask questions, to improve your skills, to recalibrate your strategy. And every 6 months, we do a one-on-one strategy session with our masterminders individually. And then we also do an extra day of planning every year to get them set up for the next year. And it does take that kind of attention to your projects to get them succeeding, to keep yourself and your focus on track. And those two things are intertwined. Your focus has a direct bearing on where you end up. Where are you putting your attention? Right? And the more we can keep our attention on the things that matter most, what is going to give us success, the more likely we are to see those results that we really want.
Yeah, and that accountability is so key, because, we do I forget, everything seems so clear when I make the plan, and then a week later I go, what did I say I would do? So it's great to have that accountability kind of built in. And while we're saying you can create these structures on your own or find them in places and spaces, it is a built-in structure inside our mastermind, the Marketing Success Mastermind. And if you're interested to know more about that, I just wanted to mention you can apply for the mastermind, and we will put a link to that in today's show notes. And if you're thinking, I want to do it right now, it's HerBusinessMastermind.com. That's HerBusinessMastermind.com, and you'll get all the details on that program and how to apply. But, it can also be with a coach, a peer group, a mentor, someone who can help you zoom out and see the progress you're making, and also be that accountability for you. So it can be hard to do this on our own.
Absolutely. And that's why you and I have been part of masterminds and had mentors, for years and years and years. The other thing to think about is how and where you will track your progress. So it can be a simple dashboard or a checklist or a weekly report, and keeping a visual record of what you're doing and what's happening so that you can see the momentum building. So, for example, we have been hosting at Her Business a workshop called the Profitable Business Workshop, and it's a webinar. It's a 3-hour online training, and we've been hosting it regularly over the last 8 or 9 months. We host one about every 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks. And each time we do it, we track all sorts of things: how many visits to the page, how that page converted, how many people showed up to the webinar, how many bought on the webinar, how many did not show up but bought later. And what we're selling is subscription to the Her Business Network. How many did not show up but bought later? How many showed up and didn't buy at the time but bought later? How long had someone been on the database before they purchased? So if we're running Facebook ads, how long before the event were most people signing up? So had they come from a lead magnet to the webinar, or had they come direct from our database? Like some key things, as Michelle mentioned, those indicators earlier. And we look at that data constantly, and we're comparing one webinar to the next, and we tweak things as we go. This is the rinse and repeat idea that we've said a couple of times. So we tweak both at the front end, changing a headline, a visual, the creative for the ads, hooks, but also on the webinar. Trying one bonus, then the next time trying a slightly different bonus, tweaking the content. How do we make it more ideal based on the questions we got last time? But we don't change everything all at once. I want to say that. Otherwise, we can't know what's working. We've also done a couple of other things, and this is in this iteration, rinse and repeat. So we rinse and repeat, but we're tweaking. We're trying to improve our results. So a few webinars ago, we added a couple of video messages into the mix as far as their fulfillment emails. So if someone signs up and we send them emails to remind them that the event's coming up, we injected a couple of video messages into the mix so they could kind of get a sense of who I was and how I speak and what I was expecting of them and what I wanted them to bring along. In a different cycle, we added calling people for whom we had phone numbers, So in another cycle, we reviewed our SMS messages. So we have not cracked the code across everything, but we have stuck with this. We didn't quit. Now, I can tell you, this is not my natural mode of operation. I'd have been inclined to try a few multiple lead magnets at the same time, different webinars at the same time. But my team has been just behind this idea of sticking with it, staying with the plan. And I softened into it. And I know it was the right decision that we made. Now we're coming into our 9th or 10th time. And then we will decide, hey, is there a better topic that we could be doing? But we've learned so much in the process. We've made a bunch of sales. It's working. And, we need to be cautious of not quitting when it's working, right? Because that's another danger. But really looking at, okay, is this still my goal or, do I want to do something else? So that's kind of a little bit off topic, but I'm still in the game. This is working. We've learned so much in the process and we could not have learned what we've learned if we did the webinar once, got some sales and then went, I didn't get as many sales as we wanted. Let's do a different topic. Let's do a different lead magnet. Let's try a different approach.
Yeah, you've just modeled, right? You did the first cartwheel and you didn't go, well, I didn't just do a perfect cartwheel, I'm out. You went, okay, I need to change how I jump or strengthen my arms or whatever it might be in this case. And what you've modeled so beautifully is this concept of optimization. You just pick the SMS reminders, you add a video, you try and improve the show up rates, And, I get the privilege of working with all kinds of marketers and businesses, and a lot of the ones that you might know and look out there and think, wow, it just must come so easy to them. And I get to see behind the curtain of a lot of those businesses, and I have to tell you, it doesn't come easy. They are optimizing. They're doing crappy cartwheels and slightly better cartwheels. They're paying attention exactly what we're telling you right here. That's what they're doing, and that's why they have hundreds of thousands of followers and they do launches that are hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. But it's not because they were just freaks of nature that could do the perfect cartwheel the first time. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, the other thing I want to say, just as a little interjection here, is we're telling you to stick with it. Don't quit too soon. But it's not to trap you into a strategy that's not working. These leading indicators will tell you if this is progressing. Suzi, you're right in the middle of it now of we're making progress, we're getting results, this is good. And then at some point you might try another different webinar to contrast it, right? But if you could tell right out of the gate you tried several different iterations and nothing was working, then you might abandon it. It's not to just stay trapped in the rut that you're in. So that's an important distinction for today. It's to give a good strategy, and you want to have a good strategy, get that mentor support, get our support, follow a framework that works. You want to have a good strategy and you want to give it the consistency, the follow through and the time that it needs to work.
So if you are listening and you've been feeling like your strategy isn't working or you're tempted to try something new before this one strategy has had time to take off, we hope that today we've given you a moment to pause and take a deeper look. And we've talked about the time to result gap, that natural delay between effort that we put in and the outcome that we see. And we've looked at the difference between a strategy that's broken and one that just has not had enough of runway, enough time. And we've also explored how to track the right metrics, to listen to the right signals and to quiet the noise that can pull you off course. We also shared how to think about your own stick with it system so that you have the structure and support to stay with your strategy long enough to see the results that you want.
And so now here is our invitation to you. We invite you to think about these questions. What's one strategy you've been second guessing right now in your business that might just need a little more consistency, volume, or time? Hold that in your mind right now, something you've been doubting or feeling impatient around. Does it just need more consistency, volume, or time? What signals are already showing up that maybe you've overlooked or dismissed or haven't dug into or given enough attention to, that could show you some leading indicators that this is working, or that are some leading indicators you can work on, that you can optimize? What metrics do you need to do a better job of tracking and paying attention to? And what noise do you need to tune out right now with this project? The person that's, out there in the market giving you that, trolling you on social media. Tune them out. That's irrelevant. The impatience that you're feeling, the spreadsheet that you're maintaining that's not really telling you anything useful, whatever it is, what noise do you need to tune out so you can hear the signal that's going to guide you to success? You very often do not need to reinvent the wheel. Like we think, oh, I've got to change everything. You probably don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to start from scratch. You might just need to recommit to what you've already started and give it what it really needs to work: time, focus, trust, and follow through.
Yes, absolutely. So the success that you're looking for, I hope you can see that it might be closer than you think, especially if you can stop quitting your marketing strategies too soon and actually start getting better results from the strategies you already have. You probably don't need a new strategy. And it reminds me, Michelle, of a story that I know that you know, which is the story about 3 feet from gold. And this was a story from the gold rush era. And so it's an old story, but it's still worth telling. And that is of a man who he found some gold and he got excited and invested everything into digging a mine. And after a long time and lots of expense of digging and digging, he actually didn't find any more gold. And he got so discouraged, he sold the equipment to a junk dealer, and the junk dealer brought in a geologist who discovered a gold vein that was just 3 feet from where the man had stopped digging. So the junk dealer cashed in on the work that the first guy had done. And that breakthrough, that eureka moment was right there, but he quit just 3 feet from gold, literally. And so often we give up when we're right at the edge of a breakthrough. We're just a little more effort, a little more strategy, a little more sticking with the implementation, a little more support, a little more patience, and we might hit our own version of gold. And so I hope that's a message that we've relayed here really well on this episode. Now, in a minute, we're going to share a link to the show notes and all the resources, like other podcast episodes and resources that we've mentioned on the show. So stay tuned for that special link. Michelle, do you want to say anything before I move on?
I love that. I love that story so much. And I just am appreciating it and looking at the questions in my own life and my own business. And it's a question we just want to keep asking ourselves.
Yeah. I want to do a quick shout out. And that is because we love doing the show. We love sharing it with as many business owners as possible. We have over 100 5-star reviews, something we're very, very proud of. So if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love it if you would leave us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening where you can leave a rating or review. I want to give a shout out to DC Indigo, and I wish I knew who DC Indigo was. I don't, but DC Indigo left a beautiful review. It's someone in Australia, I know that. And they said, always great content. Suzi and Michelle unpack marketing principles in such a relatable way. So much gold, there's that word, and conveyed with honesty and a passion for sharing genuine information that truly helps. I really loved the latest episode, he or she says, on how to use bonuses to overcome objections and make more sales. Can't wait to try it out in our own business. Thank you. Thank you, DC Indigo. Appreciate you listening. And that episode that we did about bonuses, we'll make sure we link to it in our show notes in case someone here listening is like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Where do I find that? So anything we mentioned here on the show today can be found in our show notes. And our show notes are at herbusiness.com/stick with it. So that's herbusiness.com/stick with it. Michelle, anything you want to say before we go?
I think it's so much easier to stick with it when we've got good people around us, people that are cheering us on, voting for us, referring to us, mentoring us, leading the way, giving us, success that we can model. So if you look around, you go, I don't have enough of those people in my life, start finding them. Come into the Her Business Network, come into the mastermind, find your own coach and mentor, step into networks, bring good people around you, because sticking with it is, I think, the key to getting sales, to getting those results for all that hard work you've put in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. We love doing this show for you, and we will see you next time right here on the podcast. If you don't already subscribe, be sure to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. Bye for now.